Okay, so guys, today we have a very, very special guest. She's joining in from Michigan, right? And it's
Yep.
super early over there. It's like 5 a.m. So Kasia, we are super grateful to have you here. So Kasia,
おはようございます。
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. Hi.
How are you feeling?
Good. This is exciting. I see some familiar faces. This is nice.
Awesome. I love it. So Kasia, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So hi everyone. My name is Kasia and I am in love with Japan. I have always been, and everything I do is very related to Japan and Japanese. I guess I first started in high school. I went there as a high school exchange student. I was there for a year in college, and I also eventually stayed for graduate school. And the biggest thing for me was trying to find a job using my Japanese skills. So I did that in Japan. I did the Shushoku Katsudo. I also did it in Poland and Italy, and now back in Michigan. And then at the end of the day, I decided to create my own business. So I have Ikigai Connections. I have a shirt named Ikigai. I have Ikigai Connections, and I basically help others who also want to use their Japanese language and cultural skills to find a job. So I've been doing this for a couple years. My business is just a baby. So I've actually been watching Nightcrawlers to see what I can learn from other entrepreneurs, because there's so much that you can learn from each other at any stage of your career or the journey, the entrepreneurial journey. So I've been learning. I've been doing outreach and connecting with people all over the world. So I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now. I feel like it's something that I'm very called to do it. I wake up excited and, I have so many ideas and I got to do this and I got to do that. So I just have to rein myself in and focus and just see if I can make a difference in the world. So yeah, that's my story. And I love karaoke. That's my thing.
What's your favorite song in karaoke?
In karaoke, my favorite song. So there's the phrase 18번, the one song that you go to every time you go. It's Urufuruzu, Kimi ga suki de yokatta. And it starts off with a scream, and I try to do it, but I'm very onshi, I'm very tone deaf. So it's embarrassing, but that's okay. I still have fun regardless.
Awesome, that's cool. So guys, at the beginning of each show, we ask our guest speaker to set up the tone, the theme of the show with a quote. So Kasia, can you please introduce your quote?
Yes, it's a Japanese phrase, nana korobi ya oki, which literally means fall 7 times, get up 8. And I say it basically as no matter how many times you fall, you have to get back up again. So resiliency, just getting back up, because life is a journey. We fall all the time, but no matter how many times you fall, you just learn a lot from that experience, which actually makes you stronger. So it's just like one of these slow, you go down, you fall up, and you get higher, and then down, and you get up, and you get higher. So it makes life exciting, and it kind of helps with getting past the falls. So that's definitely reflective in my story, and I look forward to using that as a theme.
Awesome. Was there any situation in your life where this quote really helped you, overcome that situation?
Absolutely. I don't know how much time you all have, but so I guess going back to my introduction, when I was doing Shushoku Katsudo, or the job search in Japan, I had a really, really difficult time. And I was told by people that, because you're a foreigner, you can't do it. It's impossible. You don't know the system. And there were so many companies I applied to, and there were so many that I really had my heart set on. So I had a lot of korobi, a lot of falls. But at the end of the day, that experience is what caused me to start my current journey. So I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. So, Kasia, let's start with our theme, which is Ikigai.
Yes.
And it's on your shirt. So
yes.
What does it mean? What is Ikigai?
Ikigai is I say it's like your passion. And I'm sure, especially if you know Japanese or in Japan, you've heard the word Ikigai all the time, but it was kind of made more popular with a book called The Blue Zones. So it talks about how this Daniel Butner is the author, and he went around to all these areas in the world, and he found the areas where people live the longest. And Okinawa was one of them. So he went to Okinawa and he tried to learn what exactly caused these Okinawans to live so long. So of course the diet, the living in a beautiful, island, that all played a factor. But the main thing that he talked about was that in Okinawa, they talk about Ikigai, where it's, he then explained it. And there's these 4 circles that I'm sure everybody's seen. So the circles are what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And where those 4 circles intersect is where it's your Ikigai. And he started talking about it. It started becoming a little more popular. And I decided to use that in my company because the reason for this is I always talk with people who they're working in a job and it sucks up a lot of their time. It doesn't make them happy. In fact, I think it makes them miserable. And I know that there's so many factors involved. You can't just like change, or you can't just find something new. And especially now with coronavirus, it's almost impossible, but I see these people who are unhappy and I'm like, just try to make a change, like focus on what you really want to do. So I see that problem. And then the second problem I see is people saying, well, I don't know what I want to do. So I often talk to people, I have these brainstorming sessions and we try to come up with, well, think about like what you can do that time passes so quickly and you have no idea that it passed. That might be an example of your Ikigai. And people also say that, oh, well, I don't want to have my Ikigai be my job. I don't want to connect the two. So I often use the example of like ballroom dancing. So let's say you love ballroom dancing, you can go do it in the evenings, but you don't necessarily want to become a ballroom dancing teacher or a ballroom dancing professional. It's just something you want to do on the side that makes you happy. That's fine too. So it's just finding that thing that really lights you up. It just gives you that energy to keep going. And I just think it's extremely important because we all deserve to be happy no matter what life is throwing at us. I think it's very important to have that desire to do at least one thing. So I try to promote that message, and I'm also a very stubborn person. So I think that nothing is impossible. There is truly nothing that is impossible. So I also relay that message and think if you have an Ikigai that you're not pursuing, you have to take one step in that direction. So I'm very passionate about this topic.
Perfect. So Kasia, what if someone doesn't know their Ikigai? Like, how do you find it?
Good question. So I actually have an exercise when I have people turn off all their notifications, close their phone, shut the door, and just give yourself a moment to think. Because today we are completely bombarded. We are addicted to our cell phones. Every bing that comes, we have to look. Every bing, oh, we have to see. Oh, someone's calling me. Oh, da, da. I want you to like turn off your notifications, and I want you to be very quiet for 5 minutes. Have somebody watch the kids, make sure the dog isn't barking, or have somebody else take care of it. And just to get really quiet and to think about, so I say that there's 2 things. There's things that you really like. So pick one thing that really makes you happy and write it down. And the important part is to write it with a pen and paper. If you type it, if you put it in a note on your phone or something, that's a little different story. Apparently, according to research, if you write it down with pen and paper, it's better neurologically or whatever. I can't explain that part, but trust me, there's sources out there. But then also think about one thing that makes you unhappy. Just one thing that you wish you could somehow get out of your life. Maybe there is a toxic relationship that you have with a friend or something, or maybe there's something that you do around the house that you just can't stand and you'd love help with it. And you maybe, if your children are old enough, you can ask them for help, or just find one thing and see if you can find help with that one thing. So 1 yes and 1 no. And it's a journey to find your Ikigai. So you may not know right away. I think it takes time. And as we get older, because we're human and we grow and we learn and we interact with people, so we get influenced, I really believe that our Ikigai is allowed to change as well. So my Ikigai when I was 15 is different when I was 17 and 20 and so on. So I feel like we should allow ourselves the fluidity to be able to pursue whatever we want to do. and also give us permission to change it. So if you've been doing a job in whatever topic, let's say medicine, because you went to school, you put in all this time, all this money, so you feel like you have to be a doctor for the rest of your life, but maybe over time you do want to become a professional ballroom dancer. So you can start edging that way too and see if that brings you joy. And kind of like that movie, have you seen Shall We Dance? Shall We Dance? It was a Japanese movie and is also made in America too with Richard Gere, but it was a great movie. Just you're allowed to do things that you've never done before. Try it once. Doesn't matter how old you are. And then if you want to, move it into a career, that's what I also feel is important too. But just one thing to make you happy.
Should your life purpose or Ikigai be connected with your career or not?
I don't think it necessarily has to. I think that you can absolutely make it separate. Mm-hmm. But if you feel like you want to make your Ikigai your career, then there is nothing stopping you. Absolutely nothing.
So how can you be happy? Let's say, for example, your Ikigai is ballroom dancing, right? Mm. And you're doing that on the side, but then you're working as a sales manager in a pharmaceutical company, but you don't really like that job. What would be, the best way to handle that situation? Because you're having your Ikigai on the side, but at the same time, you're doing something that's making you suffer in a way. How do you deal with that, Kasia?
So in that situation, Angel, would you say that that person wants to become a professional ballroom dancer, or is that just a hobby?
I mean...
Let me answer both then. Let's say it's just a hobby. And you're at a company that's just a soul-sucking job, and you go there, you dread going there on Mondays. You can't wait for Friday to come. The weekends are spent partying and relaxing, and then, I gotta go back. If that's that kind of job that you have, I really believe that there's other opportunities out there. It's not easy to find those opportunities because especially in a current situation like this where nothing is happening in the world and we're at a standstill, that's also difficult. I often recommend that people start looking at freelance opportunities to maybe find a different way to supplement that income, because you need that job, right? It's health insurance, the retirement, the guarantee that you have a paycheck coming in. I understand that that's very important, especially when you have a family. And that ballroom dancing on the side is making you happy. So that's one thing that I think it just kind of charges your battery so you can go back to work and kind of gum on, persevere through that terrible job. But if let's say your Ikigai is to become that professional ballroom dancer, so you go to work every day, you don't like it, but that's okay. You have a dream, right? And you go ballroom dancing twice a week, 3 times a week. You start participating in ballroom dancing competitions. And maybe you start reaching out to the ballroom dancing the professional organizations and see if there's a way that you can make it into a career. And you slowly transition. Maybe you go to part-time in your other position so that you still have some guarantee there. And then eventually, if you can make an income, supplement your previous job with this professional ballroom dancing, then you absolutely should. And again, this ballroom dancing is just an example. It can be anything you want it to be. It breaks my heart to know that people are stuck in situations. I can't change my job because I've got children. I need the health insurance. I get it. I mean, I don't get it because I don't have children. So please, I don't want to compare myself in that way. But I really do think that there's always something to overcome. And we are stronger than we think. And it's a lot of the times it's just our minds that are keeping us back. So surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with someone who can help you just take that one little baby step forward. And that will make a difference.
I love your answer. I have another question. I think it's a little bit more difficult and also realistic. Mm-hmm. What if your Ikigai does not match your talent?
Oh,
like let's say you really want to be a ballroom dancer or a singer or a basketball player,
but you're terrible.
But you just don't have the talent, right? Like, what would you do in that situation?
Well, if your Ikigai is not connected to your job, then I think you should still do it. Who cares? If you're a terrible singer, like yours truly, I will not go to the America's Got Talent TV show to pretend to sing. And I could possibly go to a singing coach, because there's some coaches that can make you sound amazing. But I also have a karaoke box close to where I live. Now it's closed, obviously, from the pandemic, but I can go there and I can still have fun. I can go by myself and I can practice. I can also set up on my own laptop a whole system and sing my heart out for hours at a time. I think that's absolutely okay. Now, if you want to connect an Ikigai that you're terrible at with a job, then the thing I can come up with is maybe I can be a comedian on TV who just likes to sing like crazy. I mean, I'm giving all these crazy ideas, of course, because I want you to be able to relate that. But let's think of something a little bit easier. Let's say you are really into coding, okay? You're really into it, but it takes you forever to get through it, and you probably could never become a professional coder. Or that's what you think, right? So, I'm doing this project or this online training program to learn how to become a coder, but it just takes me twice as long as the average person. That's fine. I think if you still have that dream to become a coder, then you still, in your own time, you gain the skills, you gain the certifications, even if it takes you twice as long. You apply for the coding jobs, and maybe there's some companies that will be willing to hire you on as somebody, and maybe they'll pay you for 40 hours, but you have to work 60 hours to get the work done. But you're at least doing what you like to do, even though you're not very good at it, or in your mind you think you're not very good at it. That's the thing. It's in our minds. So, I mean, granted, I could think I sing good, but I'm really not good. That's a whole different story. But in coding or something, more practical, sometimes it's just what we think. Oh, I'm a terrible marketer. Oh, I can't do advertising. I can't do design. That might be something that you personally think. If you change your perspective and think that you actually can do something good. Oh yeah, I actually can translate Japanese into English. I thought I sucked at it, but you know what? Looking over my past translations, it's actually not so bad. Yeah, I've got some kanji mistakes, but hey, I think a lot of the times if we convince ourselves that we're good, then we'll have the confidence to shine and actually present ourselves to a future employer or a future company who wants to hire us as a contractor to do our work. Most of us are entrepreneurs, so if we, if we're doing something, then if we have the confidence, then we can sell our products and our services to other people as long as we're confident, then they'll believe us too. But if we're like, yeah, I kind of suck at this coding thing, but do you want to hire me for a project? They're probably not going to hire you. So confidence is key. Believe in yourself and you will go far.
How do you believe in yourself? Because I think it's quite difficult. I think it's a very good advice,
Mm-hmm.
but to tell someone like, hey, believe in yourself is like, how? So what, like, do you have any tips or any advice for someone that's, who knows their Ikigai, they know what they want to do, but they're struggling with finding like self-worth
Mm-hmm.
in their career? Like, for example, like I want to be a graphic designer and I want to charge $2,000 for a logo, but I don't because my self-worth is very low. Like I don't have that confidence. How do you develop that confidence?
I think we all struggle with this. I still struggle with this to this day. I think it's something that comes with time. It comes if you surround yourself with supportive people, kind of like this entrepreneurial group with Nightcrawlers. Once you are on LinkedIn responding to all these messages that are connected with Nightcrawlers, everybody's very supportive. You need that too. You need other people to help with like hagemashi, with the supporting. I think it has a lot to do, in my opinion, with not worrying about what's on social media and the news, to kind of silence your mind for a little bit. And Angel, you talked about this in a YouTube podcast or YouTube video about meditation. I think meditation is very helpful because it really just helps you try a little bit at a time. I mean, I'm talking like a centimeter at a time. If your life is this long, just like a little line, just to help you get a little centered and not worry about what's happening out there. Because all those social media things that you read and all the likes or the not likes or whatever, that can really affect you. And I think our confidence is completely affected by that. Like before I got into social media, my confidence was fine. I mean, it wasn't like a huge ego boosting thing, but like when I got into social media and I'd post something, I'd be like, well, why isn't anybody responding? That's so sad. Like, don't they like me? Even I was thinking that. I'm like, oh, I got to stop doing this. So don't worry about these, you know, why didn't anybody respond to that amazing comment that I wrote? Or why didn't anybody do this? So long story short, I think social media really affects our confidence. So you have to, at least for like 5 minutes a day, just not do anything and think about what you like, think about what you want to do, think about your goals, your future dreams, your passions, and gaining that confidence comes with a baby step and then succeeding in that baby step. So you don't want to charge $2,000 for that logo because it's from here to like way out there. You want to say, okay, hey, I'm going to create logos for the first 5 companies that reach out to me for free. And you give these logos, it's practice for you. These 5 companies or 5 people, they work with you on these logos and they tell you, hey, Kasia-san, you know what? I really like this logo, but you could probably improve this. And that might completely squash you, but it's also somebody giving you advice so you can go to the next level. And then somebody will say, oh yeah, that was amazing. Can I have another logo? And then once you have this demand going, then maybe you can start charging. Go say in $50. And you start slowly. You can't expect everything at once. Because when you don't get that everything, then you feel like, oh, I can't continue. But start with a little bit, gain a little confidence, next step. And I really think being surrounded by positive people is very helpful.
You know, how do you keep that motivation going? Because, for example, let's say, like I said before, I'm the designer. I want to charge $2,000 for the logo, and then I'm doing these logos for free. And, you know, I try, and it just doesn't work out. Do you have any advice to keep that motivation going?
I've struggled with this many times. What helps me is to have that, you know, you complain and you like punch a pillow and you write in your journal and you just like have a terrible day. You get it out of your system. And then for some reason, a couple days later, I get back and I'm like, all right, next idea, let's do this. And kind of like with that Nana Korobi Yaoki quote that I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm going to show you something that I show in almost every one of my presentations. This is a Japanese doll. It's the Okiagari Koboshi. It's the one that has a little magnet at the bottom. So every time you fall, you get back up. It's really old. I got this in 1995 for my first homestay family, and my dog bit it and everything. But it had a face. Anyways, so no matter how many times you fall, you're going to get back up again. So your confidence, when it gets completely squashed, the thing that can motivate you to keep going is that defeat didn't kill you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So just believe that you learned something from that. Try to find one good from that happened. Like for me recently, I mean, I've had so many ups and downs, and especially as an entrepreneur, you have so many things that come in the way that make you want to give up. Or if you're looking for a job, you have so many things that like, you know, sorry, we're not interested, or we're not hiring anymore, or they just completely ghost you and don't respond to you. So you have so many setbacks, and how do you get back up and go to the next thing? You just believe that I just have to keep trying, because if I stay down here, this is the lowest you can go. You can always get back higher. So hopefully this little doll is an inspiration. It's been inspiring me since 1995.
That's perfect. Thank you, Kasia. Those answers were beautiful. Let's go to our next question. And guys, by the way, if you have any quick questions for Kasia, you guys can type it on the chat. And then let's say she says something, you want to ask her something, just type it on the chat. And then I will read the questions for Kasia. So don't be afraid to type, use the chat, say hello, just have fun. We are having a very casual and fun conversation. Kasia, job hunting in Japan.
Yes.
Japanese job hunting. What can you tell me about that?
I will be very brief, because this I can talk about for a long, long time. I did it a while ago. I did it in 2002, 2003. So a lot of things have changed. I desperately wanted to work in Japan. I desperately wanted to use my Nihongo. I wanted to prove to all these people that please hire me. I will learn your Japanese that you want me to learn. I just want that opportunity. As a gaikokujin, as a foreigner in Japan, it was very difficult. And a lot of people said, who do you think you are? How did you find out about this? And what's going on? Like, why do you want to work in Japan? And so it was very frustrating, but I was able to continue with Shushoku Katsudo. I completed all the forms, and now they're online, which is fantastic, because at the time you had to write everything by hand, and each application had to be by hand. It was ridiculous. So now it's a little bit better and less paper and less stressful, but I loved the experience, even though at the time it was completely, it was terrible. It was like stressful, and I was worried. But looking back, I found that I had some friends who were helpful to me. They helped me with my Japanese in writing my entry sheets. So I created some good friendships, and I was able to give back to them by checking their English for essays or whatever, because I was still in school at the time. I also realized that by applying to all these different industries and companies, at the time when I applied to this one music company, and I was so dejected that they, said no to me, but I was like, but at least I had the experience. I was able to try out the Japanese interview process. I was able to go in and try the shudan, or the group mendan interview. And now, based on my experience, I'm able to talk about it in my company and help others with that as well. But now I believe that when you are doing Shushoku Katsudo, when you go to the company's websites, so many more companies, especially the bigger companies, are showing their information about their jobs hunting in English. They're actually open to foreigners now. And they actually, they translate some of their website, the parts that the foreigners have to understand, they put that into English. And I believe that Japan in general is starting to, they're more open to having non-foreigner or non-Japanese apply to their companies. And I think it's just becoming a little bit more open. Obviously now with the pandemic, it's a different story, but I have so many people who come to me and they say they're either outside of Japan or in Japan, and they want to go to Japan to work. And I think that now more than ever, it is absolutely possible to do that. When you do work in a company, as many of you may have, I believe, it's obviously very different, and there's a lot to learn, and there's pluses and there's minuses that I hear from different, different people from different countries who are used to different things. But I still think it's a fantastic opportunity to learn, because that's your first step into becoming a global business person. You know what it's like to work on the inside of a Japanese company, or maybe it's a company that is based in Japan that you do the job search for, or, and that for the job search, I'm talking about the entry level, because there's a rigorous process for applying when you're out of school. And there's also the midway, the chuto sayo. So in the middle, like you can apply after you've already worked at a different company. Both are very possible. Both are very intriguing. And I think it's great. I think whatever you want, whichever industry, you just have to, it's a lot of research and finding your particular company or in particular industry that you're interested in.
Beautiful. Kasia, we have a question.
Yes.
From Contacto Japón. And,
Byron.
And he says, hi, Kasia. What is your 2 or 3 best hacks to motivate your students to start the search of their Ikigai?
2 or 3 hacks.
Mm-hmm.
The first one for sure is to just take a few moments and turn off your cell phone. I can't tell you how important that is. We are so addicted to our phones, and I feel like it doesn't give us time to rest our brain and think about what our kokoro wants, what we want. We are so inundated with, oh, this person looks like this, and this person's doing this, and this person is eating this. It doesn't matter. Just think about what you want. So that first one is turn off your phone, because a lot of the people I speak with who are in school or just graduating, I feel separated from them, because I wasn't, I had my first cell phone when I was already doing my first job. So I don't know what it's like to have a phone when you're a student and you're still young, and it was so hard as a high school student and in college for me, because you don't know who you are yet. And I think that the phone really affects it. So first one, take some time, turn off your phone for 5 minutes. The second one, I think, is get a mentor. you need to find somebody who has a little bit of experience before you. So let's say somebody is interested in mechanical engineering. That's what they're majoring in. They're graduating and they want to find something when they graduate. What are they going to do? Well, maybe there is somebody who majored in mechanical engineering in the college that you're going to. They're a senpai, they're an alumni, so you can find them maybe in a networking, or you go to your alumni school networking, whether you're still in school or just graduated. And those are the two groups that I mostly work with. Find an alumni that you can reach out to and just start asking questions. Hey, I also graduated from the same, degree, from the same university. Can I just get a couple of, can I ask you 3 questions over LinkedIn or maybe over chatting via Skype or Zoom? Can I just get some words of advice from you? And that will lead to another one, and you just have to keep going and take these little breadcrumbs of advice from these people. And I think that mentorship is very helpful. The third thing I think is, and I should have said that while you're doing this mentorship with somebody, I think that things they tell you will help you determine your Ikigai too. Because again, finding your Ikigai is not something that's going to happen like this in 1 hour session with somebody. It just kind of, you have to keep thinking about it throughout. But I think those are my 2 main tips. I hope that was helpful.
Perfect. That was perfect. So, Kasia, let's say there's a professional outside of Japan, and they want to have a Japan-related career.
Okay.
Let's say they're in America, they're in Michigan, and they're studying Japanese, they're getting their N2, and they want to get into that Japanese company. Any tips for that person?
Yes. So if they want to we'll look at 2 routes. If they want to work in a Japanese company in Japan, and if they want to find a Japanese company in their local area. So fortunately here in Michigan, we've got over 500 Japanese companies, so I have good experience in talking about this. So if you want to go to Japan, the first thing I say is you have to figure out a way to get to Japan legally. And you can do that. Again, I'm talking to somebody from Michigan here. So I see Irvin's on the call. Hi, Irvin. We've talked about this many times. So let's say you're in Michigan. And one thing you can do is you can go find a job that teaches English. That's probably one of the easier ways. It's one of the better ways to get a visa and just get to Japan, because once you're in Japan, then it's easier to do the job search. Another route, if you're doing that, is to find a company to do your shushoku katsudo or your job search from overseas. And that's completely possible, especially now that everything's online. The only thing is that the interviews, I don't know how they do that now, especially with the pandemic, but maybe if you have to do an in-person interview, then that's when you use your tourist visa and you happen to go to Japan during, vacation, maybe plan it around the interview session. And again, the interviews should probably be at around the same, well, it depends on the company. So never mind what I just said. But so you find a way to get to Japan to interview if you do the shushoku katsudo, the job search over the computer. Or the third way is if you have a little bit of time to find a company in Michigan that has Japanese roots, and you work there and you say from the beginning, hey, eventually I do want to go to Japan. So they know that you are into it and maybe that you could start here and then eventually be sent there 3 years, 5 years down the line. And I've had, I know just recently somebody was working as an engineer, and they knew it was a Japanese company, and eventually they talked to their bosses about it so much they went to Japan as an expat for a couple years. So the opportunities really are there. You also have to put yourself out there. So that's for the person who's in Michigan looking for a job to go to Japan. If you're a person in Michigan looking for a job here, it really depends on where you are. Fortunately, we have over 500 companies in Michigan, and I just say, you have to get your foot in the door somehow. And there's so many ways to research where these companies are. We have this professional organization called the JBSD, Japan Business Society of Detroit. If you communicate with that group, they'll tell you who these companies are. The consulate, we have a local consulate. You reach out to them and they'll say, yeah, these are the companies. And I remember when I was like 20 years old, I contacted the consulate and they sent me a printed out packet of papers with every company information on there, the phone number, the mailing address. And I sent out so many resumes to these, by snail mail with my resume saying, and cover letter saying, I'd like to do an internship at your company. Please hire me. One reached out to me. It was great. But you just have to do a lot of research and see what's out there. And a lot of times companies are not really posting job ads. The job ads that you see on Indeed or LinkedIn or My Job Works, I have one too, that's like the almost like the final resort for people who are looking for a job. You have to network, you have to research, you have to go to the company's websites, and it sounds like so much work. But that also helps you kind of dig deeper into your Ikigai, because when you're going through these websites, you're learning a lot about these companies. You can also learn a lot of Japanese if you're into that, because some of these Japanese companies have Japanese and English websites. So you just compare it and you're reading English and Japanese and you learn all their kanji, and it's a great way to learn too. So 2 ways. Nothing is impossible. The only thing you have to really worry about is the visa aspect, the legalities.
If you guys have any questions regarding the visa, you can watch our episode, I think it's 5, with Miho Tanaka. We talk about visas and stuff. So good resource. Kasia, let's say I'm in Japan. I do my shukatsu, I do my interviews. I wear my suit, I go to the company, and I get the job.
Ooh.
And then I start working at that company. And I'm a professional who's living in Japan, and I love Japan. I love the language, I love the culture, but I absolutely hate working for a Japanese company. Like, I know it's like, no, like, this is not for me. Then what?
Well, I have had the experience, and I've also heard other people who have similar experiences. I think that it's, we've had good experiences at companies in Japan. So I have only heard the stories about the really, like, you know, the stereotypical Japanese companies that Westerners don't want to work at. I've only heard those stories. So first, I think it's possible and you to know that there are many different kinds of Japanese companies. So that's the first thing, is that you never know what the company's going to be like until you actually start working there. So as you're doing the interview process, I think it's important to keep that in mind. Like, if you really know that you're not going to like what the stereotypical company is, then you should ask that throughout the interviews. You should look at their websites and things like that. But I do believe that it really does depend on the industry. It depends on the company. I, for example, was in the music industry. So I had a fantastic time. I didn't really experience a lot of the, you know, the stereotypically bad things that you hear about, like the nail that sticks up gets pounded down, and, you know, these like, oh, I'm a foreigner, nobody likes me. Like, I loved my time. I had such, and I have great friends that to this day I communicate with. I also experienced, though, the business culture manners, the things that I learned about, you know, like nemawashi, you know, gaining consensus on topics, learning how to horenso, which is like the means of communication, how to tell your boss that you're doing things. So you can learn those Japanese business concepts in any kind of company. So let's say you work at one of those companies that's stereotypically like, oh, I just don't want to work here. I think listening to Miho Tanaka's interview that you did, I think it was the Nightcrawlers number 5, she also gives some really good advice, because I just listened to it. Be that change. You know, try to show something, show the results of something that you suggest that company can do. You never know. You might just be that spark that company needs to start thinking of things differently. They may actually be relying on you, the Western person, the non-Japanese person, to maybe give them an idea. And you're this, like, it's almost as if you have to kind of flip your perspective and say, okay, so everything around me stinks. Is it me? Is it them? Maybe it's just awa and I just don't match, but maybe you can give an example of something that comes from your culture, from your way of doing business, that maybe they just are waiting to hear from you. You know what I mean? And if they're completely not, then you may have to, you know, find a different company or go somewhere else. But there's also a lot you can learn from those companies too. So I hope that answered your question on him.
Oh yeah, definitely. We have another question from one of our participants, from Sima. Sima, thank you for your question. And the question goes like this: how do you know the difference between your passion and an interest you want to pursue?
Well, I think if you have a passion that you're really into, when you're doing that thing, time just flies by. And you don't have to be convinced to go do it, or you don't have to even put it on your schedule. You just crave doing it. And I've felt that way about certain things over time. Like, I used to do Aikido, and I would it was an interest to me in the beginning because I had to go change, and oh my gosh, it's going to hurt afterwards. But then after a while, I was like, whoa, I really need to do this. And I feel stronger and I feel safer. I can protect myself. So it was an interest that became a passion. So that's my interpretation. Would you like to, add to that? Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. I think the best way to find out your true purpose is to try many things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a little bit esoteric, but you have to approach it through a very egoless way. Like, what does the universe want to do with me, or want to do through me? And like I was talking about meditation and everything, and I believe that all human beings have a purpose. We're all here for a reason, and we're here to maximize that purpose. And try many things and see which one you like. And knowing yourself is very important. For example, me, I am very conscientious, very creative, and extremely disagreeable. So I need to find a job that fits these three things. And I found out the answer was to do my own thing. So that would be my advice. Know yourself first, try many things, and see what happens.
And another thing, if I may add, sure. Ask your close friends and family, ask them what you are good at. And they may come back with something that you never imagined that you would think about yourself. So, for example, I'm very detailed. I'm very detail oriented in a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was just an annoying trait of myself, which I still to this day struggle with. I'm like, oh, just too much details. I need to be more simple. But then, and when I ask my family, they tell me that. Mm-hmm. And I realize, you know what, that is actually, it can be a very good trait, right? Depending on what job you're doing. Some companies really require that you are detail oriented in let's say event planning, for example. If someone is doing a sobetsukai or a boninkai, even something as simple as that, you need to be detail oriented because something can go wrong. And your chateau is there, or let's say you're with your company and this doesn't work and that doesn't work. So you have to really work on the details. And I never knew that was a good thing that I possessed. So ask friends and family what they think that your strength is as well.
No, definitely. And personally, when I was working in one of these companies, my boss straight up told me, you know what? You can't go up the ladder because you're too disagreeable. Only agreeable people who just say yes to everything the boss says can go up. So you can't. And I'm like, all right, cool. But what about Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and all the people that changed the world, right? So I use that disagreeable to my advantage. Because as an entrepreneur, you need that grit, to be mm-hmm. I need to go no matter what, kind of like that. So it's kind of like integrating your shadow, we mm-hmm. talked about in episode 6. So, we have everything in Nightcrawlers.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a comment by Erica, and Erica says, in the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, there is a great chapter on finding purpose and interest, and how it often comes through repeated exposure and not always an aha moment. Interesting. Completely
agree. I will read that book. That sounds great. Grit
by Angela Duckworth. Kasia, before we go to the Q&A session,
yes,
I want to ask you, what are the benefits of living a purpose-driven life?
It's just if I say to be happy, that's very, yeah, okay, you can be happy. But when you're living this life that, you're trying the things that you said you wanted to try, that makes a difference. If you just keep thinking, oh, I wish, but you never do, mm-hmm. it really starts eating at you, right? So if you have a wish to do one thing, just try that wish. And life isn't a straight line. Life, you can get to a point and you can choose A or you can choose B. There's no correct way. You just choose A. And if that doesn't work, you know what? You just make a right and go back and try B. You're not going to go backwards. It's just, we're always moving forward. And if we're moving forward, but your mind is still stuck somewhere wishing, that just really starts eating away at you. So I think living a fulfilled life, you feel satisfied that you have tried something, that you attempted to go towards your dream or many dreams, or you're trying things, and it's kind of exciting too. You meet great people, you go to great countries if you want to travel the world. There's just so much out there that we can try and do. It would just be a shame to be stuck in one place thinking, I wish.
Kasia, speaking about trying, can you tell us about your
Yes.
favorite song?
I have two favorite songs. So the first one is Try by a lady, Colby Calais. I don't know how to say, I think it's French. So it's kind of maybe more towards women, but I do believe it can apply to so many people. Mm-hmm. In that song, she talks about, you don't have to try so hard to be, show off to everybody around you. You don't have to put all these layers of makeup on and wear these things that people say you should wear. You just have to, by taking off these layers that you're putting on to show yourself to the world, it's helpful to just take off these layers and figure out who you really are. And that will, it's obviously hard. We're talking about confidence before, but try to feel confident in who you are without having to put on all these faces. So as an entrepreneur, I think that's very important because, you're trying to please this customer and this person and that organization, but really just trying to be true to yourself is extremely important, and you will go further by not really pretending to be somebody that you're not. So that's my first one. And the second one I have to say, because me in karaoke, love karaoke. In my first few years of doing karaoke, I was attempting all these different songs. And one of the easier songs to learn, if nobody's learned this song, you're going to go to karaoke or go Google this and find this, but it's called Yume, which means dream, by a group called The Blue Hearts. So it's easy to look for because it's all in, Seema looks like he knows what I'm talking about. And it's easy to sing because it's are mo hoshi, kore mo hoshi. I want this, I want that. Are mo shitai, kore mo shitai. I want to do that, I want to do this. And he has this dream and he's just screaming, I want it, I want it, I want to do that. And so I just thought it's a very fun song and it's very fitting to this conversation. So zehi, yume o motte kudasai, have a dream.
Love it, love it, love it. And the last thing before we go to the Q&A session, what is the change that you would like to see in the world?
Yes, I thought about this for a while. I want us all to listen without thinking of a response. So when you have a conversation with someone, don't think about the next thing you're going to say to them. Just think about what they're saying without feeling the need to respond. And I think if we all did that, it would really be helpful with a lot of what's happening these days in this, at least in America, it's very divided, very polarized. I just want people to listen because everybody has something good to say and we can all learn from each other. So that's my message.
Perfect. Kasia, thank you so much for everything. Now let's go to the Q&A section.
Yes.
Guys, basically there's two ways you guys can ask a question. We are recording, so number one, if you don't mind being recorded and being on the show, when it's uploaded on YouTube, you can just type your question to the chat, and then I'll give you okay, it's your turn, and then you can ask Kasia directly. If you do not want to be recorded, that's completely cool. Just type the message to me privately, and then I'll read it to Kasia. I'll give you guys a minute and a half. You guys type your questions. Now is the chance. And let's go. 1 minute. Please type your questions.
Kasia.
Yes.
Hey, good
Hi.
to see you again after all this time.
Crazy.
Almost 20 years. After 20 years, we're here again together.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go. Thank you, Angel, for this opportunity. Just a quick question. I would like you to know, to share your action plan to reach people with your project, which is your short and medium term program to expand or to make people know about your very interesting and useful project, please.
I have so many plans. I have to keep looking at my goals. I have a sheet of all the things I'd like to do on behalf of my company, Ikigai Connections. And I've decided just to do them one at a time. So as you know, Byron, I was doing the Island training program to reach and help people who are looking for a job. So I have two sides of the coin in my business. I have the job seekers and I have the companies. And now I have to pivot a little bit and start reaching out to the companies and to tell them about these amazing people that have been coming to me and have been talking with me about their careers. So I actually have a webinar scheduled in September 2nd. It's almost confirmed. And there I'll be doing a live webinar talking to companies about the benefits of hiring these global employees that I'm trying to connect them with. And at the same time, I have to focus on my job board, which is the bridge, the kakehashi between the two. So I'm doing promotion. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm focusing on LinkedIn, but also using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to find people who want to use Nihongo or Japanese culture in their jobs. And now I'm going to be finding companies that are open to having bilingual talent that's not necessarily Japanese, but that's people that, we just want to use our Japanese, just let us work for you, like those are the kinds of people I'm meeting. So short term, that's what's coming up next. And midterm, I'd like to also create another online training program for the companies to use for their new hires, because the onboarding process is what's extremely difficult for a lot of these companies. And then eventually I just want to just keep reaching out, keep finding people. I'm doing it organically, just one at a time, and trying to build relationships on social media. And that's the short term and midterm-ish. So, but I'm also letting myself be flexible. If something comes up, I would like to include it into my business plan and see if I can pivot as well. With the pandemic, I've had to pivot so much. And I think it's important to be flexible in that regard, because you never know what could happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Kasia. And Byron, thank you for the question. Let's go to Sima. Sima, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Hi, Kasia, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Kasia, I want to know, what are some important things to learn or know about Japanese business culture before either starting in Japan or working in a Japanese company?
Yes, I feel like there's so much out there on the internet, so you could really spend days. One of the things I do think that there's two concepts I often talk about, which I feel are very important to know, and they kind of might be the basics, like the kihon, the stuff that you really should know, and that's horenso and nemawashi. Have you heard of those two? So horenso is basically, it's hokoku rennaku sodan, which is like, communicating, reporting. It's just giving updates. I summarize it as a way to just be communicative with your boss and with your fellow employees. So in a Japanese company, I feel like that's very important. And there's a lot of, especially when you Google it in Japanese, there's a lot of negativity about horenso written by Japanese people because they think it's micromanaging, which in some companies it definitely will be. But in some companies it's used in a great way, and it helps the company move beautifully, seamlessly, because just a quick example, like let's say you're working with somebody and they ask you, hey, in 2 weeks, can you give this report to me? and you have it on your list, you're working on it, and let's say that day comes and you're like, it's kind of done, but not done. And I know I owe this today. And like your boss is kind of worried because your boss needs that information to the next thing to do his or her next project. So Hodenso is basically like throughout the week saying, hey, I still got that report for you. Don't worry about it. And you make them feel comfortable about the fact that you haven't forgotten. And then you don't feel like they're going to come to you saying, do you have that report for me? So like, that's just a very little example of a good idea of communication. So look up Hodenso. It also means spinach, which is hilarious to me, but look that up. The other one is nemawashi, which is, it talks about, you hear about it in typical like Japanese companies where you have this document that needs to be submitted to every person and they have to put their hanko on it, and then they approve an idea, and then it finally goes to the final approval process, which is just a formality because you've already basically agreed to it. I think actually nemawashi, obviously there's also a lot of like negativity written about it, but I look at the good side. I think it's a great way to like have everybody be on the same page, because you're talking to different departments or different people and you're like, hey, so-and-so, just giving you, it's like a heads up. I'm going to be talking about this project. Do you have any ideas? Because they might actually have ideas to share with you. And you do this with, the different departments, the marketing and the sales and the whatever, and you get together and then you create this project that everybody's had a little bit of an opinion about, and their voices were heard, and it's easier to pass that. So I'm looking at the very bright side of something that a lot of people do complain about when they work at Japanese companies, but I really think there's a beauty to both of these. So if you learn those two aspects, I think you will learn a lot about decision-making and communication that happens in Japanese companies.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question. It didn't overwhelm you.
No.
Yes.
All righty, let's go to the next question, which is from Anthony. Anthony, you have the floor.
Angel, Kasia, thank you
Hello.
again for another wonderful event, and nice to finally see you.
Yes.
So my question is about language. So I believe you're trilingual, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Okay. So what are some of your top tips in addition to karaoke for mastering a language?
Yes. Yes, I definitely believe karaoke is one at the top because it's just so much fun. You don't realize that you're having fun and learning at the same time, because in karaoke, you're if you know the song well, you listen to the words and then you can see them on the screen. So it's very visual, and you hear it as well, whatever that word is. Forgot it right now. But so besides that, I also believe that if you're learning a language, do something that you really like. So I used to like novels, and there was this favorite actor of mine that was going to be in a movie that was based on this book. So I don't know what possessed me, but instead of my homework, I was reading that book every night for hours. I would do a chapter at a time, and I wouldn't know half the words in there. So I'd be sitting there circling the kanji that I didn't know, writing in pencil because I didn't want to ruin the book. And because you really want to know what's happening in that book, you almost force yourself to, not force yourself, because it's kind of like an ikigai. It was for me. I really wanted to know what this chapter was about. So I would read the sentence over and over and over, which if you're looking at my homework, I didn't want to do that. It was just like generic. It didn't have any meaning. So find something that has meaning. Other people, I also did it via dramas, via TV shows or movies. If you go to the bookstore, I forget which section it's in, and you can probably find this online right now, but I would always go to the bookstore. There's an entire section of books which gives the serifu or the subtitles for every movie. And it has them in English and in Japanese. They're like a textbook series. And if you're interested, I can share it with you another time. I don't remember what they're called. Any movie that you're interested in. I remember at the time I was looking at Terminator, Taminata, or whatever. And I would look at these books and they were Japanese and English. So you would see how the subtitles are translated. And that's a whole different way of looking at things, because it's not exact direct translation. But find something that you enjoy and do that. I think would be my top tip, because then it just makes learning fun. You don't even realize you're learning.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like I'm on the right track. So very much appreciated.
Good. Ganbatte kudasai.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Let's go to the next question from William. William, you have the floor.
Thank you. Kasia, thank you for your talk. That was very inspiring. It's also, I also did want to say, like, I grew up here. My mom's Japanese. I'm continuously surprised by the number of foreigners that seem to have a much more pleasant experience than myself. Just because I feel like I've been overcompensating for my foreignness here by trying to be and act and live as if I was Japanese when I'm really not. Even though, as you probably know, a lot of foreigners can actually be more knowledgeable about Japanese culture than Japanese people are, just because, you know, because of the diversity available in the culture. But anyway, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, what was one of your biggest challenges when you first moved here? And you know, personally, I'm actually struggling to find like the best location to live. I know a ton of people already in the area. I know exactly what I want to do for work and stuff, but that's one of the things that I'm struggling with the most. And I was just wondering what your experience was like, because I'm learning to actually look at Japan and my environment more through the foreign perspective or the foreign lens, rather than sort of like trying to be something that I'm like not like fully not, by trying to do everything the Japanese way, and which is, you know, just frankly driving me crazy. And yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had situations that would kind of be that little down, right? And maybe, you know, I also look a little different, so I stand out with my long blonde hair, and people would I've had people come up to me, and especially in the Inaka, where they would be like, they want to touch my eyelashes for some reason or feel my hair. So after a while, that got a little strange. And at first I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But then after a while, I'm like, I don't know if this is kind of too much personal space. So that might have been the thing that kind of was difficult for me, because I didn't want to be seen anymore. I wanted to put a hat on and roll my hair up in underneath the hat, and just not, and like put on sunglasses so that I wouldn't stick out. So that was, after a time, I might have gotten tired, because I wanted to have some privacy. And for example, on the trains, I would, for a while, I rode my bike everywhere. But before I rode my bike, I was on the trains, on my usual train, going to classes same time each day, or each day of the week. And eventually I found that people recognized me. And at one networking event, somebody's like, oh yeah, you're on the Tobu Tojo-sen every morning at 9 a.m. or something. I'm like, oh, that's really scary. So that was one thing that did inspire me to ride my bike all the time, actually, because I didn't want to be seen all the time. That said, I guess it really does depend on the people that you come in contact with, like your friends and your support. So I actually had an easier time in the Inaka, even though I stood out, and they would know everything I did and everything I bought at the grocery store. They knew me, and it was so welcoming, and I enjoyed talking with them. And even though I couldn't really speak Japanese, I was just like trying to make conversation, and I really enjoyed that, and they were so wonderful to me. And sometimes when I lived in Tokyo, because I was in Tokyo for about 6 years, sometimes I felt as if I was lumped in the category of the bad gaijin, right? The ones who are disrespectful and yell things out loud and da da da. So I was just like, I sometimes didn't care for that as well. But I don't know, maybe I just see things in a positive manner. I really try hard to do that. I definitely got that from my family, my parents, but I really just tried to see the good in things. And then I just started ignoring the negativity, because that was kind of, I was seeing the negativity. I don't know if they were perceiving me that way. It was just me thinking that way. So Tokyo, I think, is very helpful to have that internationally minded area. I don't know if you're thinking about Tokyo. I don't actually know Osaka very well. Kyoto is more, I lived there for about a year, and it was very, very touristy for me. So any foreigner that's where I was always had my hair touched, and children coming up to me saying, can I take a picture? So Tokyo, I think, was very good for me, especially when I worked in like the main areas, like near Shibuya, Omotesando. And I actually lived further away in like Asakusa and outside of Ikebukuro, just towards the north, even Saitama and Nakano. So it was a little bit further away from the main parts of the city. And all of those areas I felt were just when you get into a rhythm, I found it was very comfortable and I enjoyed it. And I was always just trying to be open-minded. But again, I don't know, maybe they wanted to talk to me in English or I don't know, but I actually had a really enjoyable time. So at the end of the day, I just have really good memories from Inaka and city life. So I'm sorry that you're having those difficulties. Is there a particular area that you, or you can communicate with me afterwards, and I can give my
Yeah, no, it's
website
just
address.
funny. It's just funny because like I've practically lived here my whole life, but it's one of the, having family here and, constantly like, I have Japanese friends that I'm, quite close with, as well as, foreign friends here. And I feel like I'm just constantly bouncing between both of these worlds, of the foreign world, and it's a huge privilege, but at the same time it's also very stressful, just because the Japanese people have their own way of sort of living, and their own communities and so on and so forth, and not, foreigners may be welcome there, but they're still foreigners. And then foreigners, because of their inability to access the same kind of resources, at least, they will, naturally figure out their own communities to sort of live in. And the Japanese people treat them as foreign, and therefore acknowledge their need for certain types of help and so on and so forth. And so, and this is where I was saying, like, I was like, why are the foreigners having a higher quality of lifestyle than me? Because here I am trying to do the Japanese way, because, obviously that should be more advantageous, but like I'm struggling to just get by day to day, and I could never really figure out why. And then I would hear story, actually Nightcrawlers was a, really a wonderful opportunity for me to gain more insight into this. And I began to realize that it was really my frame of reference and my perspective that I had sort of self-sabotaged in the way by abandoning my foreign identity and forcing myself to be way too Japanese, to the point where it's like I'm more Japanese than Japanese people. And because I'm hunting through the Japanese internet for Japanese, like, resources that not even Japanese people would be able to find, at least easily. And as much as that's given me a deep insight into like deep Japanese culture, it's also brought attention to the fact that I just don't feel nearly as supported as I do in the foreign community by the Japanese community. And so it's sort of made me think, okay, well, I really need to change my perspective on this. But at the same time, I'm actually trying to attempt to do something that I haven't really consciously done, which is to like live as a foreigner in Japan and like embrace that foreign side of me, which was a little bit counterintuitive, because even though it's part of me, when I'm constantly surrounded by Japanese people and like only speaking Japanese, it's like I kind of dissociate, because it's almost like I forget that I've actually got this foreign side in me. And it's been very helpful to hear about these different stories of foreigners and expats living in Japan and the various struggles that they face and how they've overcome it, because I'm actually facing those now for the first time, and realizing how difficult it is. But at the same time, I've never really bothered to look for resources that foreigners access. Like I don't go to the internet and look for like cheap housing in Japan in English. Like I would always type in like chintai, something, 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 all in Japanese. And so it's given me a completely different perspective on everything. And so, yeah, that's why I was very curious. Yeah.
I think you're doing a great job with taking the first step. Like this is a community that I think Angela is working hard to create. And I think there's a lot of good people here. And by watching these other interviews, I think you'll really be able to get a different perspective. And maybe now is the time to switch your internet searching to English and go to like, the different magazines like Metropolis magazine always had some good articles. And I haven't done it in a while, but there's just a bunch out there. gaijinpot.com has a lot of things, and just like there's definitely so much out there. I mean, and I'm sorry you had that experience, but now you're taking a first step and you're hearing these different perspectives. I think that's a great way to get going, because there really is a lot. And maybe as a gaikogushin, I was living in a bubble in Japan. I don't know. I mean, I was just happy every day. And I write journals in my journal all the time, but I remember waking up and like, what a great day. What a great day. It's like ridiculous. Like, really? Are you crazy? And then I came back home to America and I had the most severe reverse culture shock because I don't know, maybe I did live in a bubble, but I was there for 8 years, and 8 years of like practically daily happiness is got to say something. And
yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, why are these foreigners, they seem so much happier than me? And I realized it's like, oh, well, they're experiencing Japan kind of as a foreigner, as almost a tourist. Whereas I'm sort of sitting on the Japanese side, sometimes actually supporting and helping these foreigners, but actually struggling to meet my own needs. And I could just like never really figure out where that was coming from. And it was partially, I think it was like self-denial. So anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. That was helpful.
William, thank you so much for your questions, as always. Let's go to the next one. By Irvin. Irvin, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
hello.
I'm glad to be here and listen to this discussion. It's very insightful. And I wanted to ask Kasia, are there any aspects of Japanese business culture that you wish were implemented into Western business culture, like a way to make it more improved, less stressful, and like that?
I really think that the idea of Kaizen, which I learned greatly about in my last company, it's very big in manufacturing. It's just small incremental steps to improve something. I really think that Kaizen is a good thing. And so I learned it in manufacturing, where you've got this, assembly line, and you bust out a product 1 per minute, for example. So you think, is there a way I can improve this so that maybe it's 1 product every 58 seconds? So in manufacturing, it's very important because time is of the essence. So when I was involved in manufacturing, I was like, oh my gosh, every second counts. This is going to mess with my brain, right? But it's really interesting to see the ideas that people come up with, because over time, a baby step in improvement really does equal a huge change in like time savings and money savings. Oh my goodness. So like when you're thinking about a process, like I used to work in manufacturing with, I was helping, and I could see people making LCD TVs. So I would see how this this frame would come down the assembly line, and you had to put like a screw here, put this here, and like your hands were moving like this, right? And you did this for every screen that came in front of you. So people would actually come up with ways that instead of doing this and then this and then this, let's do A with left hand and then right hand, things like that, that actually save like a tiny portion of time, but it also is easier on your body for doing that. So that's why I first was introduced to it. And then back in Michigan, I was in the automotive industry. I noticed more Kaizen as well. And the company I worked at was all about Kaizen. It was fantastic. I realized that that's a great way to look at things, because instead of just thinking, okay, this is the way it is, and this is the way it has to be the whole time. And don't get me wrong, there's still lots of things in Japanese companies that probably need to be improved upon, and they don't use Kaizen in that part of the business. But Kaizen in general is just to think, hey, you know what? I've been using this Excel sheet to create these numbers for this report, but we haven't been using it in every Monday meeting anymore. So do we need this sheet anymore? Do I need to spend an hour every week to create this sheet? And then that's a Kaizen idea as well, because you're saving yourself an hour a week. Nobody's using the report. Get rid of it. It's taking up space on the server. So Kaizen, I think, is a really, really neat thing that could be used a little bit more, not just in manufacturing, but in other ways of business. So thanks for asking that question, Irvin.
Thank you.
All right. Irvin, thank you so much for the good question. Let's go to the next one. Just a moment. From Michael Sanchez. Michael, got the floor, man.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So Kasia, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Angel, for another event. Very cool. Last one I attended was one where Anthony spoke, and I enjoyed that one very much. But anyway, my question was, what was the moment that seriously made you question if what you were doing professionally right now was the right path? And what was it that convinced you to stay on it?
Yeah, I think about this daily, I will say. Especially as an entrepreneur, you're in your own mind all day, every day. And you always think, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? Am I actually going to make money from this? Is this worth it? I'm putting in so much time. Is this actually going to have any results? And, I'm still a baby in the entrepreneurial world because I just, recently started, and everything you do, it really makes you question whether it's going to work or not. But so to give a concrete example, I just recently did, and I know that Byron was there, so thank you for your patience, but I just recently did an online webinar for the first time. And I couldn't get connected with everybody. I was talking and recording for 20 minutes before somebody texted me and said, hey, we don't see or hear you. And it's like this technical difficulty that just totally destroyed me. Not only that, I had 2 more technical difficulties in that same call, because when I got everybody back, 15 minutes later, they had to wait. I couldn't use my presentation because the settings were off. And then the third thing I noticed is that I was blurry on the screen. So the YouTube thing, it was awful. And so after that, I'm like, I am not meant to be doing live webinars. I just don't get this. I'm not technologically capable of doing these things. My brain doesn't work in that regard. So I had a moment where and I just talked about it. It was terrible. I'm like, the future is going to be online, and I can't even get a webinar started. So then you get up the next day, you think about it. I like to journal, so I journaled about it, and I'm like, you know what? Hey, it was a learning lesson, and everybody else probably had the same things happen to them the first time they did a live webinar. I just have to practice some more, maybe with less people. And I think this is a skill that is very important to have. So it'll be important for my business into the future, especially if I'm trying to connect with people in Japan or other countries. And with the pandemic, this is the only way that we can communicate right now. So these downs that you have really can bring you down, whether you are looking for a job or an entrepreneur, but we just have to just get right back up and try again, because I don't know, it's my dream. So I got to keep going. But man, those downs are hard too, though. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if there's something that you're struggling with. That everybody is struggling with stuff. So we just have to support each other and really just Owen Suru, like, hey, I got your back. You got this. It's okay. You can do this, and just keep going.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much for the question. It's not a question, but Jessica Brown, our last guest speaker, she says, Kasia, thank you for being super inspiring.
Thank you.
And then the next question is from Herb. Herb, you got the floor.
Hi, you're in Michigan. So
yes.
How have you been able to get in touch with maybe smaller size Japanese companies or mom and pop operations where you are? Because I'm in Nagano here, and tourism is getting really big here, and that's a new thing. And I know they're hiring a lot of people because people from Australia and Singapore are coming up here to ski.
Oh.
And for people who are, the pay is very low, but for someone who's very young and can work for, is willing to live in, kind of a Spartan kind of situation, it might be a good chance to develop Japanese.
Absolutely. We should definitely communicate on this topic.
I think I talked to you on LinkedIn a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So if you want to send me some email, maybe I'll be able to put you in touch with some people up at some of the ski places. I don't know about visas.
Fantastic.
Problem, but I think I know that the prefectural government is really big on bringing people in here for a short time to do some kind of tourism thing.
Nice. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I will definitely reach out to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Nice.
All right. Thank you, Herb. And our last question for the night, last one. It's a private question. It goes like this. Kasia, how do you network effectively from outside Japan in the tourism industry? I understand it's not the ideal time for it right now. I just feel like my purpose is to work in regional revitalization and tourism, but I also know just how much trust is so paramount when building relationships with Japanese businesses who may not be used to foreigners. And on a side note, this person has worked in a tour company in Tokyo for a few months, which is how this person became interested in something beyond pure promotion.
Mm-hmm. Let me think about that for a second. So networking, online and in person, right? Right now, we can't really do the in person. It's very difficult. So online, you've got various methods. You can do it via LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., the other social media. I know that LinkedIn isn't really used by a lot of Japanese people. And if they do use it, they're usually involved in the whole global, communications, and they're into that. But I believe that Facebook is more used in that regard. So if you're trying to get to like a local area that has, I'm guessing you're thinking the smaller, let's say you're talking about a town outside of Nagano, for example, and there's very few foreigners there, and you want to work with that regional office. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Angel, you can interrupt me if the answer comes in. But let's say you want to connect with this really great tiny town in the middle of nowhere, and you think it's beautiful, and you want Gaikokujin to go there, and you want to help that, revitalize that small town and show Gaikokujin the beauty of like this unknown Japan, okay? So you're probably going to have to know some Japanese, and you can let me know if you do or do not. I think that knowing Japanese is very helpful, and if you don't, then I think it would be wise to work with a Japanese person or find somebody that does know Japanese, so you can do that. And reaching out, it's kind of difficult to just reach out, like cold call, but maybe what you could do is, like, I would find that governmental prefecture or governmental office website, and it's probably all in Japanese. So you read all about it, see what you can learn from that, and do the contact, reach out to them via that website or their email, and just be honest and say, I love your town. I'd like to get to know somebody. Is there any way that we can start a relationship? But they, you have to kind of phrase it in such a way so that they want to communicate with you. It's not just a fan letter that comes into their inbox. Oh, this is so cool. Another foreigner, wants to like our town or something like that. But if you offer, hey, let's work together. Maybe I can bring you tourists. Maybe I can help you economically. I'd love to be that person. You never know what could happen with that. So I hope I understood that question and answered it correctly, but you can always, I think Angel added my information. So it's ikigaiconnections.com. Please feel free to reach out and continue our correspondence. I would be very happy to. And I like connecting with others, so please do.
All right, Kasia, thank you so much. And I think that's it for tonight.
Hey.
Guys, thank you so much for coming. And Kasia, it was a pleasure having you. We are super grateful that you woke up early and, to come into the show and give us all this insightful information and, and enlightening us. Like, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And know that I always get inspiration from others. So I'm just reflecting it back, and we can all gambaru and do this together. So I hope everybody is able to find something that they find joy in.
Perfect. Awesome. And guys, we do, if you guys want to contact Kasia, I added her LinkedIn link, and I added her website, Ikigai Connections. Kasia, is there any other way people can reach you?
Just ikigaiconnections.com. You'll see my social media. I've got an email address there. So that's just probably the best way. All
right. And we're also having an event next week. We are going to talk about storytelling and brands in Japan. That's it for tonight, guys. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Nice. I know we're in a pandemic and things are difficult, but don't give up. Find your Ikigai and let's do our best. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.